Hi, good evening. It's Dean from maverickstar Observatory. I thought we'd, jump on board this train that's going to travel around Switzerland, so it gives you something visual to look at, as opposed to just, a still photograph for the duration of the video. And I wanted to just talk about a few things with my views on, the way I see the general attitude going globally. And I dare say you guys have noticed it as well, and there is really, I think, a growing problem because something is becoming more apparent, and you can look at it through different generations if you want. If we just start with the younger generation, perhaps from 18 to 25 years of age, they know they've been set up with a pretty dismal situation, and they're in a situation where they've probably left university now with a lot of debts, probably in the ranges of £50,000, and when they come out of those universities with these qualifications, they're not able to get a job within the field that they studied for. And we're seeing this at an alarming rate in this country. There is more surplus educated people than there are the jobs for them, so it's become almost like a lottery. I'm hearing stories like, where people have been for an interview and they have interviewed 1,000 people. And you just put yourself in that shoe of that person who is confident that they, are, well knowledged on the subject of that role that they're applying for, but there are also equally another 1,000 people. So the competition for the jobs have vastly outweighed the actual positions that are available, and yet universities are still taking the children's money off them, and continuously rolling out more and more educated people in fields where they're not going to get a job. There's another thing as well. I mean, let's just put that on the side, and please feel free to give me your opinions on anything I talk about, and just remember, I'm not the expert on anything. I'm just giving you my opinion, and I think that you'll associate with some of the things that I'm talking about, maybe even agree with some of them. The other thing is, which is, I think, dangerous, is the minimum wage that is being set by the governments. And I can understand we don't want people exploited and paid below minimum wage. We know it does exist in our countries all around the world, and we know that child labour is still used in factories in some parts of the world, and for pretty much of us, there's nothing we can do about this. It is just the exploitation which is allowed to take place in these countries. But if we take minimum wage in, say, countries like the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, America and Canada, and some of the countries around Europe, what are we actually getting for that minimum wage? So if we just focus on some key environments where people work, like, say, for instance, caring, I really wonder how much caring people are going to do when they are in an old people's home or in a hospice or something like that. How much caring are they really going to give for that minimum wage? I mean, where is the motivation to really push yourself to do beyond what is called for that money? Because I'm well aware that a lot of people see it like this. You will get what I feel you pay me and nothing more, and that will be probably the legal requirement that, as an employed person, I'm allowed to give you. And the employers must know this as well. I mean, you can't get quality for low money. It's not something that the equation works like. Nobody builds Rolls Royces and sells them for less money than the average priced family car. Let's face it. It just doesn't exist. So the big problem here is that it might be state-funded care homes, it might be privately funded care homes, but they are equally still on low-paid salaries. And you're an elderly person, let's say, or a person that has gone into one of these for some sort of rehabilitation, and you're going to be there for a duration of time, and you are going to want the best treatment that you can possibly get. You're not going to want the bare minimum that someone can offer you just because they are being paid minimum wage. We are going to run into very shortly a lot of big problems, and we are all inevitably going to be upset. It's not just minimum wage, it's not the reduction in jobs, it's a lot of things. It's the performance of our governments. So, where do we go from here? How do we change it? And here lies another problem. Before we get to even the point of asking the question, how are we going to change things and improve these things? We need to have the motivation to do it to start with. And from what I can gather, there simply isn't enough motivated people to do anything to change these things. And as a result of that, they're going to get worse. And the last thing I wanted to do when I knew I was going to do this video is try and be optimistic and not so pessimistic, because we are, after all, talking about the reality of a lot of things we can all agree on. But we know that it isn't very optimistic because of the outcomes of what we've already witnessed over the last, say, 10-20 years. Why isn't there enough enthusiasm and optimism for people to want to change? It's down to, I think, what has been brainwashed into them. You see, if you was every day reminded of the fact that if you just try to achieve something, you've already set about that task of doing something about it. But there are a lot of people that look at the situation and say, there's no point, because despite best efforts, it's not going to happen. And that is not, I've got to say this, for the special forces around the world, that is not their motto. Their mottos are different, but let's just look at one of the ones in the United Kingdom, the Special Air Service, SAS. Their motto is, he who dares wins. So if we just look at that phrase or that sentence, he who dares wins, we can read a lot from it. And we know that they want the best people in this service, and they want successful people in this service. So they've got to be in the mindset to be people that believe they can do it. And if you look at that sentence, he who dares, first of all, if we just look at that part, right, first of all, you've already set yourself the task, so you're already trying to achieve, and therefore, because you're doing that, there's a good chance that you're going to. And there's the second half of that sentence, who wins. So he who dare is the the motivated part that says, right, we're going for it. And then who wins, is the bit that because you tried and you motivated yourself, you was actually successful at doing that. So this is what I'm trying to get across to people, is that they haven't got that to start with, and because they haven't got that to start with, they've already set themselves up to fail, and not even try to begin with. We're very, very powerful species on this planet, and we have achieved our wildest dreams. If you think about it, pretty much anything that science has dreamt up, we've pretty much been able to put it into reality. Look at the iPhone, look at the computers, and how computers have changed things over the years. And we have arrived, in my view, at a point in time where we need to make some real serious changes. But to do that, we've got to all accept the fact that these changes need to come about. And there is a couple of things that are failing everybody right now. And in my view, one of those things stems from how we get resources. We obtain resources through exchanging labour for a salary or a wage. And if technology is taking away the jobs from the people that need those jobs in order to obtain money so that they can participate in a monetary system and get the resources they need, then there's going to be a blockage point. How do they then obtain money to participate in the system? There is a couple of other ways. One is by state benefits, which plunges the person, I believe, into depressive states and poverty. And that can have a very devastating impact on the rest of that person's life if they stay in that situation for too long. Or you simply steal it, and there's a majority of people that wouldn't want to take the risk because of the repercussions if you get caught. So the dilemma is, you work for it, the money, you steal the money, or you get given the money by benefits form, and then you can participate in the system. But I think we need another system where we obtain resources and we're not impoverished through only being able to obtain small amounts of resources. I'm going to change the subject a little bit here because I think I've already stated something, a foundation on a few facts there, which is enough for you to, sort of like gauge where we're going. So one other thing I wanted to talk about in this little discussion with you guys is corruption, and more generally, not just corruption in the family, because we know that happens. It's already arrived in our living rooms, and I said it would. And the problem is with this is when you set precedents as a government, you show people how you are allowed to act, pretty much. So if you're going to tell lies to the public, then don't be surprised if they start telling lies, because you've set precedents for it, and people are creatures of habit and copying other behaviour. So we've got a lot of corruption problems, and they're not just no more associated with governments. They are within our local towns, villages and streets, and even within our own homes. The amount of marriage break and relationship breakdowns I've heard take place just over these lockdowns that we've had here in the UK has been unprecedented. And I mean, I can sort of like understand that. If you've got two people that are usually used to getting up in the morning, getting the kids ready, having the breakfast together, and then both the male and female go off to work, and then all of a sudden and this happens week in, week out, and then all of a sudden they are spending almost 24 hours a day with each other, and they've got the kids there as well, and money has become a premium because of the furlough system. Then these people find themselves having to reevaluate and relearn their relationships with each other. It's not for a lot of these people that are in these relationships a great thing to now be spending 24 hours under the feet of their partner, which they've never done before for the last 30 years. And it's led to arguments, and I think you would agree with me that the majority of arguments aren't just over now the technology that we've all got, and your partner you might think he's on the phone a little bit more, or you're on the phone a little bit more, and she's thinking, or you're thinking, You know, who are you talking to, really? Can I have a look at your phone? And there it starts. You know, the distrust comes into it, and then, you know, it goes on. So, you know, this, and in some respects, you know, the partner is encouraged, like the wife is encouraged, or the husband's encouraged by the friends. You know, I wouldn't put up with that behaviour that she's doing or he's doing. You know, what you need to do is dump that person. They're a loser. They're just bringing you down, and you need to get out there and find yourself, a real champion. And you know, the scaffolding of the relationships that were there 40 years ago are no longer the same scaffolding and foundations and support of what the relationships are today. It's pretty much all based around materialism, and you know, without the person truly understanding what's making them unhappy, you know, they are at the point where they're arguing with the partner, making threats, you know, and, you know, making plans to leave. So, you know, this corruption starts at the government level, you know, sets precedents, and, you know, works its way down, right down into our own living rooms. You know, how come it is easier in this day and age for people to believe lies than it is to believe the truth? How come it is easier to destroy a relationship with each other than it is to build a relationship with each other? What has made it the way that is the case? You know, if you go back to some of our parents, and my parents have been with each other, God bless them, since they was 15 years old, and they're still together today in their 70s, and hopefully for many, many more years to come. So what has changed in that short period of time? You know, I would suggest that it might be the ease at which we get things today, the increase in materialism with people wanting more of these materialistic things, and putting these materialistic things on higher places than the relationship itself. Like, you know, some people, not just women but men as well, put cars, handbags in very high positions in their life. You know, if I've got that handbag, I'm happy now. You know, that's all I've ever wanted. But, you know, a lot of people, you know, after a long excuse me after a long period of time of wanting something and then finally getting it, realise, you know, that the novelty dissolves away very quickly. You know, and in some circumstances they put these materialistic things over the relationship. You know, if he or she doesn't buy me these things, then I'm not valid in this relationship, and I'm going to find someone that is going to get those things for me. You know, it's using that basic instinct in a different way, where, you know, the hunter-gatherer was the successful guy who went out and got the food, but what he was doing was actually getting something which wasn't materialistic, which was a necessity, and bringing it back to his wife. And he was a successful hunter-gatherer, then he was probably the most desired person in the village if he was single. But today, you know, the hunter-gatherer isn't required to bring back necessities. You know, if he can bring back luxury items for that partner, or she can bring back the luxury items for him, and we hear this a lot of the case now, more so than ever, men only going out with women because of their wealth and what they can buy him, and he'll drop his relationship in a blink of an eye just to walk off with her because she's going to be a better provider than what his girlfriend was or his wife was. So it works completely both ways, is what I'm saying. But this is where we are being steered, just like going through this tunnel. This is where we are going right now, and it's a little bit worrying and concerning, because we are going down a road which certainly is not for the best of humanity. In fact, it is destroying the real beauty within us all, and, you know, it's making the world a miserable place. One other thing I wanted to talk about was governments and what they do these days. And it's, it's still on the lines of corruption. We're talking about, we know the lies with relationship to climate change being blamed on man-made CO2. It's proven beyond a doubt. Yet, because they have the tools like mainstream media, they can keep driving that narrative where the public have no choice but to be force-fed this every time they switch on the TV or they commute to work. The advertisements are there. We need to reduce carbon emissions because they're greenhouse gases. And the thing is that the people don't understand what greenhouse gases do, how they work, and they're being took advantage of. There's not many people I know that have CO2 meters like I've got. And the reason why I brought them is so that, I could actually do atmospheric readings of CO2 levels and relate to you guys, because I know that the majority of you guys wouldn't buy one in the rest of your life. You'd never buy one. Same as you'd never buy a Trimag system, you'd never buy a magnetometer, you would never buy an oxygen atmospheric sampler, so you know how much oxygen was in the atmosphere. These things you would never buy. But the reason why I did is that the majority of you guys don't need to. But they talk about sustainability and how they are going to do away with combustion engine cars by certain date. I don't know, let's say for argument's sake 2030. It is not sustainable, first of all, to take combustion engine cars off the road just simply because they've got a combustion engine. What would have been more sustainable, because you imagine how much energy went into building the combustion engine car. Not just the car, the engine, the suspension, the wheels, the tyres, the lights, the glass, everything all required energy to manufacture it. So to just get these cars now and throw them in the bin and then purchase electric cars is not sustainable. They use these words in very loose terms, but the reality of what they're saying can't be achieved by their promotive actions, what they want us to do. And I've got to say this, okay, you buy an electric car today. Within 6 years, the battery performance has deteriorated and it may require you to buy another battery pack. How much do you think the battery pack is going to cost you? You've probably after 5 or 6 years just finished paying for the car and now it needs a new battery pack. I can guarantee you it'd probably be around about the half the price of the car. That is, if that battery pack is still in manufacturing. So where's the sustainability in any of this? And that we haven't even talked about the fact that the energy company that produces the electricity is probably burning more CO2, carbon fuels, to produce that electricity, to charge that car up in the first place. So it's not as economic and clean as what the governments are making out. That's what I'm trying to say. And these are just a couple of the little problems that I've picked out, which I see as major problems, which are causing a lot of people right now to be unhappy. Our kids are being set up to fail from the start, because even if they have the qualifications from university, there is no jobs for them. And that means they're very likely going to spend their time on a low paid minimum wage job where their potential is never really used to its full potential. The governments are going to continue to hold on to the continuity of their rule by misleading people with misguidance and misinformation, as we have proven they use and do already. And when they talk about sustainability, there is none. What we need to do is what we're not doing right now, and that is become more optimistic and believe in ourselves that we can do something about these issues. Because if we continue to allow this to go further into the future, it will get worse and worse for people right now. And we have seen largely what the outcome of these attitudes and what they lead to in our history. You know, people get chucked on trains and they get taken to Auschwitz in Poland, and they're told they're going to have a shower, but water doesn't come out of the pipes, gas comes out of there, and then the bodies are all gathered together and burned. You know, we think that it is impossible to ever witness such things in our times, and I'm sure, absolutely sure, that was what our relatives back then was thinking to themselves. It's impossible. You know, don't cause trouble. Let them carry on. Don't stick your head above the water, because, you know, it will get, you will pop up on their radar and their attention will turn to you, and therefore, you know, as a result, you will receive some treatment which is not, which you would enjoy. Let's say that for the short hand of it. So, you know, we really need to act, and we need to come together with an optimistic viewpoint on what we need to do as real solutions. And, you know, we need to act as soon as possible to do these things, make these changes as fast as possible, because if we continue, we are going to be let down by these people more than what we are now. And I just want to give a classic example, and I've used Texas unfairly in the last few videos, but I think it shows us what happens when we give our full trust to states and governments. You know, the grid went down and it didn't come back up for, in some circumstances, over a week, and that led to, you know, people's homes being damaged, and, you know, people not being able to cook food. You know, it put them in very awkward situations, and was a nice experience. And, you know, how many did it affect? Well, according to some of the you know, alternative and mainstream media outlets, it affected over 100 million people, which is a very large amount of people to be affected over something that somebody should have had at least a contingency plan to resolve the matter very quickly. You know, Texas has invested a lot of money in wind generation and solar panels, and totally overlooked the fact that they do, on some occasions, receive snow, which shuts down the wind generations, like in most parts of the world, and sun obviously prevents the photovoltaic cells picking up that radiation from the sun and converting it into electricity. So these things just simply don't work. You know, we need reliable systems that will not let us down despite the changes in the climate, and we need to be able to adapt, and that's what we're not seeing any you know, measures put in place where we can adapt very quickly to a catastrophe. And, you know, as a result of that speeding adapt, you know, people do not suffer more than what they need to. So, we talked about quite a few things in this video. I just want to briefly touch on something. You know, for the last, it's been longer than 7 days on the website now. Nobody has made a single donation to that, and nobody has made a single donation. And I think this is the first time in the history of our channel, for a very long time at least, where this has not happened. 3 days on PayPal, no funding whatsoever for the observatory, and no funding on the website for over 7 days, probably going on over 10 days actually. So, you know, I wonder really what is going on. I know it's not the case that everybody is skint, but I think it's down to, you know, the willingness to, you know, join together, and also the lack of enthusiasm to do it to start with. You know, we need to start changing the way we think, otherwise none of these things are going to change, and the route that will inevitably be in front of us will be more of the same of what we're experiencing now. So You know, I will mention the links. Obviously, you know, there's one on the website on a couple of the pages, and there's a link down there in the description. It would be great if we could see a reassurance of a few people out there that are still with us and still support us. So with that, guys, you know, I want to thank you for your time watching the video. I'm looking forward to reading your comments. I don't reply, I will admit this, I don't reply to all of them, because to do that, as you can imagine, sometimes would take days. So you know, I just want to wish you have a good evening. You know, pointing to the link down there, ask you for your help, you know, if you want to, and you know, take care. As always, bye for now.